Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today, we will dive into a very exciting topic, leading through change, why today's work trends require developing agile leaders. I'm Rachel Cooke, the CEO of Brandon Hall Group. I'm excited to introduce our presenters, Matt Confer, VP of Strategy and Business Development from Abilitie, and Luke Owings, VP of Product from Abilitie. Hi, everyone. Welcome. This session is eligible for HR, CI, SHRM, and ATD professional development credits. Brandon Hall Group is a leading professional development firm serving learning, talent, and HR executives worldwide. For more than 30 years, we have advanced the growth and performance of millions of employees and leaders. Below is a sample of organizations that we are proud to partner with. Brandon Hall Group Institute offers evidence-based research, data, and certification programs that empower organizations to achieve excellence in every area of human capital management. We also invite you, as always, to participate in our research studies. Links will be available in a PDF, or you can visit our website, brandonhall.com. Once the results are analyzed, all participants receive a piece of complimentary research and other exclusive benefits. Before we dive into today's topic, I want to share some incredible opportunities that you could accelerate your career and expand your network in ways you might not have imagined. Applications for the Excellence Awards in Technology and Education Technology close on September 12th, just 1 week away. If your work doesn't fit those categories, the Excellence in Action Awards remain open until October 17th. Beyond awards, registration is now open for the HCM Excellence Conference, February 9th through 12th of 26, plus upcoming BRIC events here in Boca Raton, Florida, the AI Summit, October 16th and 17th, and Women in Leadership Summit, November 19th. Don't miss your chance for recognition, learning, and networking. All details and applications are available in a PDF you will receive within 24 hours after the webinar. A big thank you today to our webinar sponsor, Abilitie. Since 2015, Abilitie has been at the forefront of business education and leadership development, crafting lively programs that blend human capital or human connection and technology to deliver transformational experiences for organizations, teams, and individuals. Their dynamic offerings, including the flagship 12-week MBA program, focus on core business skills such as financial acumen, leadership, strategy, and decision-making. Abilitie's curriculum helps leaders develop the timeless and universal capabilities required to manage numbers and lead people. They provide more than frameworks and tools. They have expert faculty their expert faculty guides leaders through collaborative and competitive simulations and case studies. They have the privilege of working with thousands of leaders at hundreds of companies across dozens of industries. And it is my pleasure again to have Matt and Luke here with us today. They'll be diving into some more of their great insights, and I'm really excited to get them started here. So just a few more quick things to share. We ask all of you to stay on to the very end. We have 2 great raffle prizes for you. We have the winner will get a chance to win a 12-week MBA book from Abilitie, as well as a complimentary ticket or complimentary awards to our Excellence in Action program. But you must be present to win, so please stay on to the very end. A few more quick things. We ask all of you to engage with us, ask questions to Matt and Luke, who are going to take over the presentation from me in just a minute here. So please ask questions. We'll get to them as quickly as possible, whether it's throughout or at the end. And today's learning objectives, quickly here, you will leave understanding the key workplace trends reshaping how and where we work, explore why agility is now a core competency for effective leadership, identify common barriers to developing agile leaders and how to overcome them, discover how experiential learning can accelerate leadership agility, gain insights from delivering simulation-based leadership development to global companies, walk away with strategies to strengthen leadership development programs for a changing world. And now we have our first polling question. We ask each of you to take a moment to share with us, how would you rate the readiness of your learning, talent, HR organization to effectively use AI to help your function and the business? And take a moment here. The responses include exploring, experimenting, piloting, testing, implementing, scaling, integrating, optimizing, innovating, transforming. We will share the results here in just a second. Give you another second or two to respond, and please only select one answer. All right, let's go ahead and close out these results and share. So as we see here, exploring, experimenting, implementing, and scaling are about equal at 19%, based on how you responded, where piloting and testing is 52%. So that's interesting. It's good to see that you're already starting to start to test out some of these solutions. And then integrating and optimizing is 10%, and innovating and transforming does not look like it even has yet been achieved. But that's okay. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking about what some of the best practices and what organizations are doing. So let me go ahead. I want to turn it over to Matt, who's going to lead us through the first part of the next part of our presentation today. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And as Rachel mentioned, my name is Matthew Confer. I'm the Vice President of Strategy at Abilitie. We're an experiential learning company based in beautiful Austin, Texas. I'm joined by Luke today. He is our Vice President of Product. We are excited to be with you here today. And instead of a lengthy introduction, I'm just going to get right into the content. So every year for the past 5 years, I've done an end of year work trends presentation. And for the first part of our time together today, I want to walk you through the 2025 edition of that presentation that looks at the issues driving change in how and where we work. Then I want to talk about the impact those trends are having on the world of learning and development. And then finally, I'm going to turn it over to Luke, who's going to talk about why we design our products the way that we do to build the critical skills that leaders need. Here is a visual representation of why I am skipping a lengthy introduction and getting right into the content. I have 25 minutes to get through my portion of the presentation before I turn it over to Luke. Every year that I've done this presentation, it's grown and it's become clear that the best way to get through it is to present it quickly and attempt to make some conclusions at the end of each section. That is a very creative way for me to say, I hope you had your coffee this morning because this is going to move really fast. Please stick with me. I promise we will pull it all together in the end. So this year I broke my work trends presentation into 3 sections: where we work, when we work, and how we work. We'll go through each of these themes and then talk more about the impact these trends are having on the world of learning and development. So let's get started talking about trends around where we work. Just to give you a sense of how much things have changed in a relatively short amount of time, in 2019, for US full-time workers, less than 10% of days across the entire workforce were worked from home. In spring of 2020, due to COVID, it got as high as 60%. And if you average out the last full 2 years of data, the average workday spent from home sits right around a quarter, right around 25%. You can also see from the chart that some stark industry dynamics have developed in terms of the industries more likely to allow people to work remotely versus those that are asking people to come back to the office. A report by the Chicago Booth School of Business this year found that in a post-pandemic world, hybrid work is a huge part of the workforce dynamics that we all face, with around 40% of US workers now working from home at least 1 day per week. And to get a sense for how quickly things have changed, there is likely no company that better encapsulates the changes that are occurring than Zoom, one of the companies that really made remote work possible. Zoom actually ended their full remote policy for their own employees in 2023. And this year, they announced that if a worker is within 50 miles of a Zoom office, they need to be in the office at least 2 days per week. Here's a fascinating chart looking at when employees were hired and how far on average they live away from the office. Employees hired after March of 2020 live on average 35 miles from the office. Employees hired before March of 2020 live on average 15 miles from the office. This upheaval of where we work is having an impact on employees, but also on their bosses. And it was reported that in the last year, that now close to 1/3 of all workers report to a boss who lives in another metro area than they do. Remote work and hybrid work is leading to a good deal of remote management. One of the dynamics that became abundantly clear this year is that the push and pull between the return to work initiatives from companies and their workers is that many surveys came out that showcased how valued remote work is as a perk, with close to 40% of workers saying that they would accept a pay cut of 5% or more to keep their jobs remote. There were a plethora of studies and surveys that came out this year that illustrate how challenging of a situation this is for businesses, but also for workers. Here's a direct quote from one of those studies. Policy requirements for office attendance have jumped nearly 10% since early 2024. Actual attendance, though, has barely moved, increasing less than 2% during the same time period. And maybe the most impactful quote from the study, and one that has the most ramifications for us, was a 2024 survey of business leaders that found a shocking 75% of them who said that their firms are still terrible at remote work. I want to close this first section on trends around where we work with two charts that are a bit of a deviation from the last few charts. The first one dispels a myth that I see shared frequently, and that myth is that younger workers switch jobs at a much more frequent rate than older workers. The study found that the share of workers who have stayed with the same employer for over 20 years is about the same as the number was in 1983. The final chart in this section simply gives a stark reminder for the makeup of the workforce today and the makeup of the workforce in the future. By 2035, it is estimated that almost 80% of the workforce will have been born after 1980. I want you to keep that statistic in mind as we move to the next two sections. All right, that was a whirlwind through theme number one. So as promised, I want to close each theme with a few concluding thoughts. Regarding the theme around where we work, I think the geographic changes we've experienced over the last few years are starting to stabilize a bit, but there are still stark changes we are all digesting from where things were prior to 2020, with more than 40% of workers now working from home at least 1 day per week, and remote work and remote management now being the norm. Additionally, any survey or statistic that you look at points to how much the desire for flexibility is still driving a force for workers. And finally, the generational impacts are profound, with a workforce that will have almost 8 out of every 10 employee and workers born after 1980 by the year 2035. I told you we were going to move fast, and we are about 400 seconds into my presentation already. So let's move on to theme number two. Let's move from trends focused on where we work to a conversation about trends focused on when we work. Microsoft released a report earlier this year which did something fascinating. It utilized survey data from over 30,000 workers combined with trillions of anonymous data signals generated from how the workers interacted with Microsoft products like Outlook, Teams, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Given that theme number two in my presentation is all about when we work, it might not surprise you to find out that this report's title was The Infinite Workday. I found a ton of fascinating things in this report, but let me highlight a few that really stood out. Close to 30% of employees are now diving back into their email in the evening. And in a given week, instant messages are frequent occurrences outside of core work hours, with around 50 messages per week outside of those core work hours. Additionally, compared to data from just 1 year ago, evening meetings are up 16% in the last year, and close to 1 out of every 5 workers are checking and responding to emails over the weekend. The average employee now receives over 100 emails and 150 Teams messages per workday. And here are the two stats that really jumped off the page at me. Close to 60% of meetings are what Microsoft refers to as ad hoc, meaning that they are meetings called without a calendar invite that came far in advance of the meeting. And an average worker only gets about 2 minutes between interruptions during the workday. When you look at how email, instant messages, and meetings during their core work hours can interrupt their uninterrupted work time. The result of all of this is that work has expanded and transformed in a way that does make us more incredibly dynamic as an economy, but also more disjointed and distracted as workers. The chart at the left looks at work done by scientists to look at when workers' peak performance is during the day. And that data is then overlaid with when meetings are scheduled. And it finds that one of our two performance spikes is usually filled with meetings, and the other performance spike usually falls near the end of most people's workday. Additionally, researchers have shown that large meetings, those with 65 or more attendees, are actually the fastest growing meeting type on people's calendars. And additionally, almost a third of meetings now feature participants from multiple time zones. And a final shocking statistic I found: PowerPoint edits actually spike 122 minutes in the final 10 minutes before a meeting that has a PowerPoint linked in the meeting agenda. We are going to get into this a little bit more when it comes to the impact on L&D, but suffice it to say, work has changed a ton. And when we work has changed even more. People can check in on work at all hours of the day, and most employees are. The amount of interruptions we face is increasing, and our time for focused work is diminishing. And a huge chunk of our day is meetings, and they are getting larger and spanning a larger geographic area when you look at the participants. All right, 2 themes down, 1 to go. Thankfully, I'm about on time, so let's cross our fingers that that continues. And let's finish with theme number 3 around how we are working. And then I'll try to tie things together when we bring in the impact that L&D can play before we talk about how we design our trainings at Abilitie to use simulation learning to build agility in leaders in more than 50 countries around the world. So no conversation about how we work can start without a conversation about AI. In case you haven't heard enough about it, get ready to hear about it for the next few minutes. Generative AI is reaching people faster than any previous technological revolution. Nearly 1 in 9 workers say, and maybe I should caveat, 1 in 9 workers admit that they use a generative AI product on a daily basis to get their job done. Last year, it was reported that ChatGPT hit 1 billion daily searches on their platform, almost 6 times quicker than Google hit that same threshold. And this year, that growth accelerated even more. In December of last year, users were sending over 1 billion queries to the service every day. And a mere 7 months later, that amount had grown to over 2.5 billion queries each day. And AI is already leading to massive changes in how we utilize technology, specifically search technology. Worldwide search traffic fell by about 15% in the first half of 2025, which most are attributing to people going to chatbots rather than search engines. It won't surprise you that the sites focused on some of the topics that are potentially most exposed to the benefits of a chatbot answer are seeing the biggest decline. Science and education sites have lost 10% of their visitors, reference sites have lost 15%, and health sites have actually lost 31% of their visitors, as Dr. Google is getting replaced by Dr. ChatGPT. Not only is the usage of ChatGPT growing, the preponderance of people being kind to ChatGPT is also growing, with close to 70% of people saying that they are polite to their chatbot. It's a little hard to see in the corner of the slide, but 55% of people are kind because it is, quote, the nice thing to do, and 12% are polite because of the potential robot uprising, and they want to be in the good graces of the robot. So not only are we kind to ChatGPT, researchers are actually finding that we are starting to sound like ChatGPT. After analyzing almost 300,000 academic YouTube videos, researchers found that usage of ChatGPT favored words like delve, meticulous, and tapestry have jumped by over 50% since ChatGPT's release. And any conversation about ChatGPT and work does need to openly talk about the impact on workers and the potential for job loss. There have been a ton of stories this year with companies ranging from Salesforce to Microsoft talking about the impact AI is playing on their employees' work, but also on their employee headcount. And just in the last sorry. And just in the last month, a study from Stanford found something striking that is somewhat aligned with the prevailing narrative. It is younger workers in jobs exposed to AI that are feeling the brunt of the job dislocations. Economists studied payroll data through mid 2025. They found that young workers aged 20 to 25 in highly exposed jobs, highly exposed AI jobs, such as software developers and customer service agents, experienced a 13% decline in employment since the advent of ChatGPT. Notably, these economists found that older workers or workers in less exposed jobs actually saw steady or rising employment during the same time. But when you zoom out a bit, the lens and the picture gets a little bit murky. What you see on the screen is a direct quote from a paragraph from an HR report talking about job loss in the era of AI. And my conclusion from it is that AI will, of course, have disruptive effects on the labor market. But we are too early and the technology is too nascent to really forecast the true impact. If I was betting, I would wager that in the same way that somebody 100 years ago would have had no idea of that the job of social media account manager would exist in the future, in the same vein, we have no idea what some of the jobs of the future might look like. It's also helpful, though, to go directly to workers and ask them how they're feeling. And researchers actually did just that. One of the more fascinating studies I uncovered this year found that more than half of workers, half, are worried that AI could replace their current role in the next 3 years. But as the study put it, those workers are too busy enjoying the benefits the tool is providing for them to worry. Because close to 70% of workers said that AI is helping their productivity, and 40% of workers said that AI was leading to better work life balance, reduced their stress, and led to better decision making. So, what's the conclusion around theme number 3? Well, first and foremost, AI is playing a huge role in how we work as these tools are being adopted at a breakneck pace. And companies are openly talking about how they are utilizing it, which is directly and indirectly bringing up the topic of job loss and job displacement. And finally, generally, workers are happily nervous about the impact that AI is having and the impact it might have in the future. All right, I've thrown a lot of statistics, charts, and quotes at you. Let's transition to discuss a bit about how the work trends I highlighted are impacting L&D, and of course, how L&D is responding. Three things are really evident, and I'm going to dive into them in more detail in the coming slides. First, skills are becoming the focus as training for a set position is fading a bit into the background. Second, L&D leaders and business leaders more broadly are addressing the current transformation of the workforce by prioritizing agility. And finally, AI fluency is no longer a nice to have, it is a must have. So let's dive in. Gartner puts out a major report each year on HR priorities, and one of the headline statistics was that close to 90% of L&D leaders agreed with the statement that the need for skill development will significantly increase over the coming years. SHRM came out with a report trumpeting the focus on skill development with a specific focus on the importance of, quote, human skills you need to thrive, end quote. You will see that theme echoed again and again in the coming slides. The World Economic Forum set out to ask organizations what are those key skills that leaders need. Analytical thinking came in number 1, but resilience, flexibility, and agility came in number 2, the highest that has ever ranked in that survey. Additionally, this report specifically highlighted a crazy prediction that close to half of all workers will need some level of reskilling in just the next few years due to automation and AI integration at work. I think we should all get prepared to hear a lot more about skill stacking in the coming years. This Forbes article laid out a compelling vision for teenagers as they prepare to enter college and the workforce, but it's actually an approach that has appeal for individuals of all ages around skill stacking in this new age of work. Here was a quote from the piece. Quote, "Consider a teenager who learns basic Python coding, develops an eye for graphic design, and builds strong communication skills through the debate club. On their own, each of those skills is valuable, but together they open doors to careers in user experience research, product design, or tech-driven marketing roles." End quote. Machines can analyze data, but they can't design innovative solutions that also resonate emotionally. They can process language incredibly well, but they can't truly persuade, lead, or create culture. And skill stacking is the potential solution that allows employers and employees and organizations more broadly to thrive. And I think you're going to hear a lot more about it in the coming years. And L&D leaders are responding to the need for skill stacking and agility. And when surveyed by LinkedIn, close to 90% of L&D leaders say that the ability to manage change is crucial, becoming more crucial, and that organizations must take direct efforts to develop employees' skills in those areas. Additionally, LinkedIn asked employees at all levels, and thankfully for everyone on this call, close to 85% of employees said that learning added purpose to their work. Potentially more interesting is the fact that the percent of employees who said that learning and training is specifically what allows them to adapt during times of change has increased from 49% in 2022 to close to 70% of all employees surveyed in just 3 years. Unfortunately, LinkedIn also charted a dramatic drop in manager support for their teams in just the last year. So you have two things kind of running up against each other. Employees have never wanted learning more to help them adapt during times of change, and managers are actually struggling mightily to provide the support their teams need. And the problem might be continuing to get worse. According to Gartner, there was one manager for every 5 employees in 2017. By 2023, that ratio increased to one manager for every 15 employees, and according to recent data, it appears that that ratio is growing further. So how are organizations responding? Well, SHRM pointed to simulations and experiential learning as a way to provide employees what they are needing in realistic training scenarios. I cannot hide the fact that as a simulation company, we at Abilitie feel like this is music to our ears. But it's also what we are hearing from clients all around the world. And candidly, I do think that some of the massive growth we have experienced over the last few years has simply been driven by a move towards experiential learning to give employees the practice they need in critical skill categories. So now let's talk about how AI is actually impacting the learning environment. A randomized control group from Africa received a ton of press due to the fact that researchers concluded that adding a personalized AI tutor reflected a similar learning gain for those students from what they would see from 2 years of typical learning in a period before AI tutoring allowed technology to reinforce critical concepts in a personalized manner. Additionally, a study looked at an introductory physics course at Harvard and found that students who used an AI tutor showed double the learning gains compared to the control group on average. And universities are responding. Earlier this year, Ohio State went a bit viral when they announced that starting in this fall cohort, their students would be quote unquote bilingual, a phrasing that they are using to describe their efforts to make students fluent in both their major field of study and the application of AI in that area. Additionally, in the corporate world, a new phrase is gaining a lot of traction. And that phrase is BYO AI. People Management Magazine was looking at trends in L&D, and they illuminated the rise of employees bringing their own artificial intelligence and using their preferred AI model on personal devices to help them do their job quicker and more effectively. The critical part of this report was the part that highlighted that from an L&D perspective, it will mean helping fill the knowledge gap. Many employees know how to use AI superficially, but may lack the deeper insight to use them responsibly or effectively in a workplace context. Another report highlighted that although AI was a bit more confined to the tech sector in 2022 and 2023, recently AI has really started to expand to other industries. Specifically, the report highlighted that more than half of all jobs requesting AI skills in 2024 actually appeared outside of the tech sector. That was a radical reversal from previous years when AI was mostly confined to Silicon Valley and the computer science labs. What does this lead to? Well, it really highlights the reskilling trend we have highlighted over and over again. And just for the people on this call, this report actually showed that the HR industry is seeing the fastest growth in terms of jobs with AI explicitly listed in the job description. Overall, job postings mentioning generative AI skills are up over 800% in just the last few years outside of the IT and computer science sector. So, how does this all come together before we get into how we at Abilitie are tackling this challenge? Well, first off, researchers and companies are, of course, demonstrating that AI can do more work, and that is getting bigger and bigger every year. But interestingly, and maybe unsurprisingly, there is a potential shift underway towards the more human centric skills being valued by organizations. And not a surprise, given the theme of the talk, this report concluded that, quote, this evolution calls for proactive workforce development, including reskilling and retraining programs to prepare workers for this new dynamic. All right, before I pass it over to my colleague Luke, I want to leave you with three quotes. And the first quote, I have to say, is a bit dystopian. Quote, in our lifetimes, we may be able to perform with a quarter of the human effort to which we have been accustomed. We are being afflicted with technological unemployment. End quote. This is dystopian, but one critical thing I'm forgetting is the year. This was not this year. This was not last year. This was from the famous economist John Maynard Keynes in 1930. And he was speaking about the risk on the horizon because we would be able to perform all of the operations of agriculture, mining, and manufacturing with a quarter of the human effort to which we had been accustomed. Quote number two, a system of almost unlimited productive capacity which requires progressively less human labor. You are on to my trick at this point. This was not 2025. This was not 2024. This was at the dawn of the computer era in 1964. And finally, a quote from more recent history. The past wasn't as good as you remember. The present isn't as bad as you think. The future will be better than you anticipate. As I pass it to Luke, I want to leave you with my strong belief that the world is changing incredibly fast, but it has always moved incredibly fast. And investing in learning is a way to respond to that disruption and thrive in the face of it. That is my core belief, and our core thesis at Abilitie is that real world practice without real world consequences is the way to deliver that learning. Since 2015, our team at Abilitie has delivered experiential learning to help over 100,000 leaders at organizations all around the world. Let me turn it over to Luke to tell you more about how and why we design our products the way that we do and what you can learn from it. Luke, over to you.
I love it. Matt, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Beautiful. I'm updating my slides over here in my last 10 minutes, making sure I have them all set up like everybody else in Microsoft. Before I do so, though, I want to give people a chance to throw any questions you might have in the chat. I always learn a ton from Matt running this. I've actually seen you run it for now 4 years, Matt. I've seen you do it on that. And so while I'm letting people reflect and think if there's any questions they want us to pick up at the end, I'm going to throw two questions at you, Confer. When I watch your presentations, I always see, hey, man, the trend that I'm thinking about all the time, AI, is only part of something larger, right? Your first 2/3 were about the generational things, were about the geographic shift, were about the remote work shift. This year, when you were doing it, what was the thing that surprised you the most? And what was the thing that piqued your interest the most that you want to look into as we go forward next year?
The thing that surprised me the most is I think we have reached a little bit of a sense of equilibrium. When you look at some of the data that I didn't include about when people are being hired for new roles, it's very likely that those new roles are not fully remote. And that's very different from where things were 2 to 3 years ago. So I think some semblance of hybrid work, people in the office, not fully remote work unless you've been at your employer for a long time, I think is pretty set in stone. Now I'd be surprised to see that go back the other way. What was the second question?
What piqued your interest in so much that you want to look into it over the next year?
I think the AI stuff is still fascinating. Have we gotten to maybe like 80% and the last 20% is the hardest part? I heard somebody make the comment that, with self-driving cars, 10, 15 years ago, people thought that self-driving cars would take every truck driver job, and that
Yeah.
obviously did not happen. The last 10 to 15% is the hardest. And I kind of wonder if that's going to be similar with work. The tools are providing incredible advantages for workers, but they're probably not going to replace every white collar worker overnight in the same way self-driving cars did not replace every truck driver overnight. Even that was the prognostication, 5 years ago.
Yeah. Though down in Austin, we do have self-driving cars, Matt, and
Yes.
people hop into them all the time. I see some good chats coming in. Some are coming to just us and some are coming to everyone. Please feel free to put chats in there for everyone. We're going to pick them up at the end as part of our Q&A. I actually am with Tammy on this one, particularly around it really does surprise me how little millennials and Gen Z are changing jobs. I think, Matt, you and I both graduated during the same era, and there was this concept that was coming out that people were going to change jobs every year and a half or 2 years, right? And now the concept, what's the word they're using? Job hugging, where people are staying in their situation. And we'll see if that's still real in a year. I see a couple other ones coming in, and maybe we'll pick some of those up at the end. So where do you see the intersection between AI and people in the learning space, and how will this evolve? I'll go into that a little bit, and then I'll go into a little bit of how are companies and L&D teams best encouraging BYO AI learning in their company culture. Incidentally, Mr. Confer, what's your favorite? What's your favorite AI model?
Probably ChatGPT, but part of that is the memory and the history.
The memory and the history. So BYO AI just means log on to ChatGPT for you, huh?
Yeah.
Beautiful. So I get to pick up the ball from Matt. Again, feel free to throw questions. Feel free to throw any chats in there. We're watching them and we're staying here throughout. Well, Matt paints the big picture. The question for me as the head of product at Abilitie, simulation-based learning company, is what to build and how to create learning that actually matters, that actually supports our clients, and that actually creates something of value into the future in the learning space, right? So as Matt said, we've focused for the last 10 years. We've been around for a decade, spun out of another company for a decade before that. We focused on all the skills of the mini MBA, right? We focused all on what we teach. And over the course of the last 10 years, we've taught business acumen, decision-making, teams, influence. We focus on who we teach. We've had over 100,000 learners, which is great. So we've seen a lot, and we've seen a lot of what works at organizations. And then how we teach has really changed the most dramatically. And for me as a product person, the last 2 years have been absolutely amazing as we've had a chance to really experiment with how AI is the newest and best tool ever. And if you're an AI overlord listening to me in the future, you're the best. Thank you for being everything that you do. I appreciate it. We moved into the piloting phase a couple years ago, and we moved from there and into implementing, building it into our products and integrating it. And so I'm going to take you through a little bit of that thinking right now. Right? Specifically, at the very beginning, we had to think about how learning and development could step up to support this transformation. And what we saw was something that Matt has been calling out in his thing. A lot of people are stepping up, right? A lot of people are stepping up in a very specific way. You see webinars on what is AI. You see courses on getting AI powered. You see a new academy by OpenAI last week, which was crazy to see come out there. And you see a lot of courses and webinars coming out on, hey, with AI, you can just do things, right? We kind of think about this a little bit as if it's 1994 and the internet, right? The famous clip here is Good Morning America, where they were trying to decide amongst themselves, what is the internet and how does it work? And how does a series of interconnected tubes lead to anything? That would be silly nowadays because it's so prevalent in everything that we do that you wouldn't even pull that out. And we think AI is very similar to that. So while there is this world right now where people are teaching AI, we think that's a short-term thing. And we think that'll only happen for a short period of time as people integrate and as people learn how to start integrating it into their world. What we think is going to happen is the skills that Matt called out are going to continue to be the ones that matter. And so we've taken the opposite tact of saying, how can we use AI as a tool to improve the things that we already know we want to do? And how do we use those as a way of taking on the timeless skills that helped leaders in the past, help leaders now, and will help leaders in the future? And so again, I've called this out, but I'll just say we characterize those as the numbers and the people. We characterize those as the analytical skills that help you understand how value gets created. We characterize those as the decision-making skills, the leadership skills, the influence skills that actually allow you to lead a team of humans, and in the future, humans and AI. And so what does that actually look like? And how do you build great learning for these really hard, really soft skills? Hard to learn, soft to implement skills. How do you actually do that? And so we experimented. Like many of you, we started experimenting 2.5 years ago. Holy cow, it's been a long time. 2.5 years ago. And we started seeing some of the single player chatbot experiences that are so exciting that are coming out in a lot of places. What really surprised us, though, was that these single player chatbot experiences that many of us see through ChatGPT, through Claude, through all these different things, could actually unlock deeper social experiences. And coming from the perspective of being a simulation learning company, that was really exciting to us. So we started integrating this AI into our courses. We started integrating it into what we do, and we saw how it would unlock social experiences. We saw when we put two people on a computer together, how it would unlock the magic of them collaborating. We saw when we put in a room with a team, they would use it to unlock how to build their strategy and where to go. We saw when we actually integrated it into our reflection and our type of cohort level experiences to try to say, okay, where's the group now? What are we thinking? Where are we going? How that would unlock insights about the group. It would unlock deeper discussions. It would unlock our facilitators, right? And so when other people zigged, we zagged. And when people said, hey, we're going down on the single player chatbot world, we built social and immersive experiences that were synchronous. So what you see on my screen is a 2-hour experience. Again, I know I have a lot of instructional designers in the room, so I'm permitting myself to go a little bit wonky. But we built things that would actually cause people to come together, to use AI to amp it up, but to keep the experience as humans talking with humans and humans thinking about how they can learn better. We strongly believe that humans are social learners, that the collective is better than the individual, and that when we work with clients, we can create experiences that make that better. And so we built 2-hour type sessions that integrated AI characters that we had created and made people actually simulate parts of the workforce where they actually had to go in and ideate a new idea, pitch it to the CEO, the CMO, and then go to the CEO as a team and say, here's where we want to go. We said, wow, this is actually pretty amazing. With AI on the other side, we could really get to the point where we could say, hey, you're not only role playing this with somebody else, but you're practicing it and you can repractice it and you can immediately get feedback. And so we designed these experiments around those. We designed these experiments to not just be about the AI human interaction, but it to be about the human to human interaction. And again, if you'll permit me to go a little bit wonky, we allowed the AI interaction to create an opportunity to practice, which then created space for two humans to talk. Two humans to say, okay, what would you do in a situation like this? For leadership skills, for management skills, that's a really hard thing to do, and there's not one right answer. And so we created synchronous types of experiences for people to work on together. And then we had a way where we could bring a whole cohort together and say, okay, well, what do we see in our overall piece? So when we're working with the biggest consulting firm in the world and we have all their new hires, we can start to say, okay, here's what we see across your learners, and here's how they're learning from each other, right? And we built that into every new product that we have. And our product that we started that was AI native, right? We built it into our old products and we put it into our new product that's AI native. We called AI cases because we thought the case experience that comes from the business schools of the world, that comes from learning for 100 years at this point. 1908, Harvard Business School started and had that. Harvard Law School had that. That case experience is a way of actually teaching leadership. And we thought AI could take it to the next level. And so that's really what we built there. And so we focused it along these timeless skills. We focused it around creating interesting and exciting experiences for humans to go through. We made our core use case synchronous learning, where we had facilitators taking learners through it, learners going through it together, and the AI providing a scaffolding for it to be personalized at scale, regardless of how big we got. We also, and I see the chat here, Tammy, and so please keep bringing in the chats. We also allowed for people to do it self-paced and practice on it afterwards. We allowed them to practice on it beforehand, before they came to a session, so that they could get a sense of where they are, so they knew what they were trying to learn from a session. We think there is absolutely a place for asynchronous learning, and so we've made our products often available before and after sessions, but we strongly believe that most of the learning, most of the transformation that is required in today's world to be a leader actually requires some semblance of synchronous, social, experiential learning. And so that's what we've doubled down upon, right? We've had about 35,000 conversations in our AI engine in the last year and change, right? And so we've learned a lot. And so from a product designer, I can share a few of these things that we've learned as we've tried to develop in a world that's changing and moving faster than we've ever seen, with tools that make us more powerful and more vulnerable than we've ever seen in our world. What we've come out with it, and what my product team that I talk to on a daily basis, that says, okay, here's where we're going, here's why we're going, here's what we've learned. We've came out of it is a few key principles. First and foremost, we've said, in this world, create repeatable, high impact experiences that deepen learning, right? The world is getting so much more superficial. The world is getting so much more attention, losing their attention, right? There's probably a better word for it, Matt. We can delve into that later. But the world is getting more superficial. We think that we as learning and development leaders and leadership development leaders need to create experiences that allow depth. That's how humans really change. And so we need to create experiences that deepen learning. As part of that, the second thing we would say is there's an urge to rush. There's an urge to rush. Do more, do more, do more. We think sometimes slowing down is actually the path to true learning and true transformation. And then we think that it's incumbent upon us, with the tools and the overwhelm that learners are facing, to help show them the bigger picture so that they can lead their own growth. And we've really doubled down on that in our products as well. So I'll take you through a few of these really quickly, and then I'll give it to Matt, and we'll have some questions. I see some good chats coming in. Matt, do you mind checking them out? I can't quite read them while I'm talking, so make sure you check them out.
I think you're good for now, and we can cover it at the end.
Awesome, beautiful. So what does creating repeatable, high impact experiences that deepen learning mean? Well, for us, it means actually running our cases through the data and seeing how people perform on them, seeing what people do well, seeing what people don't do well, and then seeing how we can adapt the cases to make them actually have the edges that lead to learning be even better, right? We see that, and when we see people start replaying cases, when we see people get interested, excited by a case, play it once, and then want to play it again because they wanted to learn and apply what they learned there, right? We see it from our facilitators. We are blessed to have some of the best facilitators in the world who bring our cases to our clients and go out there and deliver them to our clients, and then tell us how our clients and how the learners at our clients actually engaged with them. And so hearing from them, hey, I've seen this case 5 times. This is the 6th time I'm doing it. This is what I observed at client A, and I won't share any client names here, but client A is actually a really good opportunity for us. And that's why we develop them as repeatable. We also really try to put core into our products. And again, I know this is zagging while other people are zigging, or zigging while they're zagging. People are doing one thing and we're doing the other. I don't know which way it goes. But slowing down is really important. And I'll give you an example that's showing up in our space. There's this push in our space, as you integrate AI, to integrate it with voice. This is a super specific product decision, but I know some of you struggle with this and think about this. So I'll share our journey on this, right? When AI first started coming out and we built role plays, we tried to get to voice as quick as we could. We thought it would be amazing. We thought people would want to talk to it and they'd want to practice it live just like they talk on a Zoom. And we couldn't quite get there, so we put in text. And we were surprised by how people then engaged with it. And we surprised at how much more powerful it actually ended up being. And we went into the brain science and we looked at what worked and what didn't. And for those of you who are Daniel Kahneman fans, we looked into the system 1 versus system 2 thinking. The system 1 thinking being the automatic one, which gets triggered by voice when you're reactive, when you're just going. And we saw that the system 2 one, which is triggered by chat, actually causes a learner to be more considered, more effortful, and actually was changing how they thought. So we went through and we said, wow, while this mimics a real world conversation and gives true to life practice, we've actually stuck with chat because it slows down and allows a learner to think and change how they think, which is a really important thing and a real gift you can give to learners nowadays. It also allowed for social learning, like I said, like we tried to push, where learners could collaborate together. It also allowed us to deploy in new places. We've deployed our newest product in more places than I can remember, all over the world in over 10 different languages. And it's been fascinating to watch how it shows up. And then as product folk, it allowed us to create an auditability and understand what was working and what wasn't and get really good at what we did. Right. So it's really interesting how a small product decision can actually lead to totally different paths and can be non-intuitive or counterintuitive in today's world. Right? We saw this over and over in different places. We saw it when we integrated our AI into reflection tools that we built and had the opportunity for reflection tools to create themes of what learners were thinking about. And then the AI provided a canvas for a deeper conversation about how they were engaging in their organization. And it became a really interesting, really deep piece. I don't know about you, but I don't have as much time to reflect as I used to. The world's moving faster. I'm getting interrupted every 2 minutes, Matt. Is that about right? And because of that, it's a gift we can give learners to just slow down. Lastly, I'll say it's incumbent upon us still in this world to provide space for them to learn, for them to keep their self-discovery. Like Matt said, BYOAI is the new world. You need to bring your own tools. You need to bring your own experimentation. You need to keep going. And us as learning and development leaders can really focus on how they lead their own growth. AI actually offers the opportunity for more richer and more insightful data than we've ever had in our L&D field, right? We can actually go across these conversations that people have. And when we go to this, we say, okay, here's what you do well, here's what you could do better, right? We can start to give them a path for the future. We can start to give them access to asynchronous learning that they can take forward, right? And then for our clients, we can also identify cohort level insights. What are your managers really doing well? What could they do a lot better at, right? For the business leaders who work at our clients, we can actually start to give them ideas of how they should manage their communications to really focus on the right things. All of this helps a learner understand where they are and helps a cohort understand where they are so that they can move forward. What I'll say as we end this and as we get to the end, make sure we get to some conversations, some questions here, and I give it back to Matt, is that there's a lot of things that are changing in today's world. A lot. Geographical, generational, Gen AI. Is that my third G? I tried to get three G's there for you, Matt, almost. Okay. Gen AI, right? All this stuff is changing. It's really important to still remember that we work with humans. And it's really important to remember how humans work. And our job at Abilitie is to build products that help build the leaders of the future that are going to be ready for the world as it comes. And that shows up in 1,000 ways. But most of all, it shows up by remembering it's a human endeavor. And remembering that our education isn't just about telling them what to do. And we use the quote of it's not about filling a pail, but it's about lighting a fire and setting them on a stage for transformation. Because the whole world of work is transforming in front of us. And it's on us as leadership development leaders and learning and development managers to actually make sure we prepare them for that future. So that's my piece, Matt. I probably went a little bit longer than I wanted to, but when you ask me for a minute, you get 10, and that's just the way of the world.
So yeah, Luke, somebody asked in the chat, where do you see the intersection between AI and people in the learning space, and how will this evolve? And maybe I'll restate that question in a way that leads from your last point. What surprised you the most about when you interact with learning leaders about how they want to integrate AI, or the questions that they're asking when they ask you about how AI is being integrated into the work that we do?
I think what always surprises me when I talk to learning and development leaders is just how damn thoughtful we all are, right? We're so deeply thoughtful about what could work, what will work, how it should go, where it should go, what we should try out, what's going on. And I think the kick in the pants I would sometimes give is, can we just try out more things? And can we do it a little bit more? Right? We come from a field that's deeply thoughtful, deeply analytical, deeply reflective. And for us, that's really helpful. things are moving really, really fast, and we still need to create space for slowness among our learners, but we need to make sure we also support the change that's happening and move fast ourselves.
Jed asked a question that's kind of a nice lead in from that. How are companies and L&D teams best encouraging BYO AI learning in their company culture? I'll take that and then I'll be interested in your thoughts, Luke. I think one of the things that surprised me the most, because I get to sit with a lot of our first time clients, there's a real desire in learning and development to integrate AI somehow into their training. And I think it's because, and they're telling us explicitly, employees are saying that in surveys. Like, I see this, I use it, I want training on either how to use AI tools more frequently, or I want training that integrates AI. The problem is, unsurprisingly and very reasonably, companies tend to get a lot of pushback from the tech teams or the procurement or any of those things. And I think organizations that then get over that hurdle are actually leaning pretty heavily into, this is an AI powered tool. We're hearing from you and we're responding to that. So I don't know
Yeah.
if that's how you embrace BYO AI. I think you have to just kind of acknowledge that that's happening. But I do think that clients that are working with us, you can always turn the AI on or off. But the ones that are able to get approval to turn it on are leading, at least right now, pretty heavily into that.
I think that's right, and I think that's fair.
I think we're coming up on 5 minutes, and I think that captured all of the questions.
I think we
Voice
have a
first.
raffle, Matt, but I have a trivia question. You all
Okay.
don't know this, but every Friday, Matt Confer runs a trivia at Ability, and it's amazing, and it's always something new. Mine actually is very fair though, because Confer brought it up during his segment. So we have a raffle prize, and we have one coming up, and you can send them to just us. Send them to just us. What three words did Matt Confer say identify that somebody is using AI and AI is prone to use when it writes these out? What three words? I used one of them in mine. I tried to use all three of them, Matt, but I couldn't quite get to the other ones. Let's see if any chats come in. Here we go. I see some of them coming in. Here we go. I see one of them. I'm not going to say it out loud. Oh, I see two of them. Uh-oh, I see the same two of them. Uh-oh. We got some people coming in, Matt. Is that Australia coming in? And Canada, maybe? Looks like everybody's sending us chats. I haven't seen all three yet. I haven't seen all three. Here we go. We might have to give it to the twos. What do you think, Matt?
Your
What are the
call.
tributes? Uh, BYO AI skill stacking. The three words were, go, Matt.
Delve, meticulous, and tapestry.
They were good ones. Meticulous got left. Oh, there's meticulous, one of them. Okay. Since nobody got all three, that means we're going to do it randomly, and we're going to pick from here. And so, Rachel, do you have a random pick here, or Matt, do you have a random pick that we can go with?
I think for the book, the random pick was Jed Dunn. And then I think I'm going to turn it over to Rachel for the other winner.
Fantastic. Looks like you've had a captive audience today. You covered so much interesting topics and over a pretty large landscape. So thank you for bringing it to our audience today. And then for our next raffle winner, the recipient of our Excellence in Action program, let's see, Emma Stewart from GSK. Congratulations. Hopefully you're still with us. I believe you are. And just we'll be in touch following up with both. Excellence Action recognizes organizations are committed to enhancing employee engagement, fostering a people-centric culture, and productivity through employee feedback. It's exciting, and especially with all the work that you are involved in the learning organization where many of you are from. We look forward to you participating. And this MBA book, this looks amazing. Can you send me one too? Is that a yes or is that a no, Luke?
We're gonna talk to our people. Let's
All right.
let's make sure we don't write checks we can't sign. But yeah, well, I'm sure we can get you one, Rachel.
All right. Well, thank you. Anything else that you want to wrap up today with?
No, I just say thank you very much for this opportunity. It's always great to do these. We get to do them every year. And if you have other thoughts or other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. I think we can put the website in the chat to reach out to talk more. This is what we love to do. It's the best part of our job. So thank you very much for joining us today.
You both, Matt and Luke, thank you. You were great. And hopefully we can bring this in person to one of our upcoming summits or events. I think you just you teased everyone here. There's so much more that you could cover.
Isn't that the truth?
Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank
See
you
ya.
so much.